I would like to welcome you all and apologize for not being able to attend this ceremony in person. I cannot emphasize enough what a great honor and joy it is for me to be singled out for the Grawemeyer Award. My sound world is one of versatility and involves an unpredictability that can, at times, be brazen or even biting. It is an expression of my personality and my take on the world. I have often publicly spoken out, still a no-go for a woman, in support of tolerance, openness and equality in both the music world and in society at large. In doing so, I have never held back from confrontation. Things have in some ways improved for creative women since 1928, the end of Virginia Woolf's novel. But when it comes to opera, for which I'm receiving this prize, there is still a very long way to go. Where are all the women composers in the opera houses of the world? They still make up maybe only 2%. And the situation is even worse for women over 50. Moreover, the social value system applied to a woman is a different one, as it dictates how she is to behave and how she is to live. I can make compromises, but I will not allow myself to be compromised. It is not only about economic inequality and unequal access to opportunities for women. Although some things have changed for the better, there is, even if today more hidden, a phallocratic value system that continues to disdain and disrespect work and works of women, people of color and the non-binary, more than those by men. Orlando, a fictional musical biography, is my opus summum. I drew inspiration for the work from Orlando, a biography, Virginia Woolf's 1928 fictional account of a young male poet in 16th century England, who mysteriously becomes female at age 30 and lives until the early 20th century. I wanted to reflect the wonderful diversity of life and evoke a subtle form of sexual attraction that cannot be pigeonholed into a single gender. This opera has to be, for me, a subversive blurring of genres, time and politics, while at the same time reflecting on how little has changed over the centuries, and yet how much change in fact could. The audience was divided over Orlando, some reacting with anger, others with excitement. The opera consists of a number of different, acoustically heterogeneous states of being, using many fake and real quotes to traverse the glorious history of music. From innumerable perspectives, the opera recounts the story of an indefatigable free thinker who fights against stereotypes and man-made norms, and for freedom, equality, and emancipation. With Orlando, I wanted to compose a genre-breaking work to highlight the non-negotiable freedom for the individual. While searching for a topic for this commission from the Vienna State Opera in 2014, I happened to recall a short walk I took with Quentin Crisp through downtown New York in early summer 1987. And suddenly it became clear to me. It had to be Orlando by Virginia Woolf. A story of striving for freedom and expression, originality and fluid identity, but also a manifesto against war, because Orlando journeys through a painful history of violence and oppression, whilst continuing to search for love, peace and tolerance. The character is a remarkable human being who questions every kind of duality and experiences a sense of in-betweenness in both life and art. The fictional character lives in a realm between history and tradition and continually breaks the rules imposed by society so as to reconfigure and rethink history and the here and now. At the same time, this figure fuses in an all-embracing otherness, male and female, into something new, by oscillating between the abstract and parody. A passage through time with which Virginia Woolf depicts and criticizes changes in politics, etiquette, societal constraints, and literature. Therefore, I immediately realized that the work I had to compose must be a hybrid grand opera, designed as a fusion of music, fashion, literature, space, and video, without a fixed set design, but only huge movable video walls. It had to be an opera with diverse people from diverse genres that would shake up this venerable old opera house a bit. By deciding to present the unidentifiable, diffuse, non-tangible, unbounded, persistently acoustic metamorphosis and transformation through never-ending distortions and detunings, as well as varying degrees of density, and the continual reappearance of a seemingly aggressive sonic physicality, I wanted to disturb and undermine the representational apparatus and, in so doing, the male gaze. The opera covers several hundred years full of violence, over 2.5 hours, with a score of smoothly fleeting stylistic shifts and disorientingly fuzzy instrumental distinctions, which I have always called androgyny in sound. In a world facing wars all over the globe and the rise of nationalism, the climate crisis, and the persistence of the patriarchy, we need to retain a dash of hope that the future harbors better, and hold this feeling dear in our hearts. Otherwise, we will be filled with more and more hate, as currently happening all around us. These words of mine, made as an artist, are an expression of my helplessness, because we are once more living at the very edge of time. What's more, in times of war, death, pain, and immeasurable suffering, composing at a desk seems to me to be a rather arrogant occupation. And I find it extremely difficult to motivate myself and concentrate. At the same time, it underscores how powerless art is against war and violence, and that Bertolt Brecht's optimistic statement along the lines of "there's a war on, but nobody shows up," is just wishful thinking. Man remains a monster, and a monster slumbers in all of us, one that can be awakened at any moment. Art is largely unable to effect anything, but it can point things out and be a mirror of society. This is especially true of music theatre. Therefore, in the excerpts which I will now finally present, I want to focus on the continuity of violence and war, which Orlando experiences across the centuries. Though there would, of course, be so many other topics in this opera to talk about. We are in the present. The narrator, Orlando's alter ego, is remembering, and kind of presents the mottos of the opera. We learn that Orlando, as a young man, is trained to be a warrior, which is still the case in many countries even nowadays. With Virginia Woolf's words, leaf upon leaf, fold upon fold, I wanted to bring to mind the technique for the whole opera. We can listen to the narrator talking about the simultaneousness of the past and the present. That's why we hear a madrigal in the strings and at the same time a modern drum set and a detuned electric guitar in combination with a whistle flute bending around the main pitches of the madrigal. Example 1.
Oh, how young I was. was unfairly laid upon me, the burden of providing a memoir. I'm not the most widely lived or the most richly memoried. I do constantly ask myself, is the way we define ourselves memory? Why do we forget? I began to search among the infinite series of impressions which time had laid down, leaf upon leaf, fold upon fold, softly, incessantly upon my brain, among scents, sounds, voices, harsh, hollow, sweet, and lights passing, and brooms tapping, and the wash and hush of the sea. Who am I that I should be asked to write a memoir? I'm a mere dabbler in dreams, one who is not fish, flesh, fowl, or good red herring. Nobody now asks me to marry. For many years, nobody has attempted to seduce me, though showing off, which is not copulating, is one of the great delights, one of the chief necessities of life. Only then all effort ceases. One ceases to be honest, one ceases to be clever, one fizzes up into some absurd, delightful effervescence of soda water or champagne. Since I last sat down here under my old oak tree, my house, which is tangled and matted with emotions of my family history, has been taken away from me. But I am still writing. I continue writing. Nothing worth calling an adventure has befallen me since, but I still seem to myself a subject of inexhaustible and fascinating anxiety, a volcano in perpetual eruption. Therefore, I open my eyes and exclaim, here I am again. Not always with pleasure, often with pain, sometimes with a spasm of acute disgust, but always, always with interest. The past only comes back when the present runs so smoothly that it is like the sliding surface of a deep river. Then one sees through the surface to the depths. In those moments, I find one of my greatest satisfactions. Not that I am thinking of the past, but it is then that I am living most fully in the present.
The story starts in 1598. With the sentence, violence was everywhere. Orlando is a young man. Androgyny was not yet a statement against binarism, because feminization was a common fashion habit. Only from the beginning of the fin de siècle, and later in pop culture, like with David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust, androgyny became a statement of the post-World War II generation against the silence of their fathers and against patriarchy. Virginia Woolf called androgyny the catalyst of freedom and change. Androgyny used as a political strategy. Therefore, I have chosen a mezzo-soprano to be the main character. The first singing starts completely alone in the mezzo's lowest register, later accompanied by a detuned harpsichord and a lute, with embellishments of an Elizabethan madrigal. Example 2.
Such was the case. It all began in 1598. The age was Elizabethan and violence was everywhere. He was only 16. Yes, he. For there could be no doubt of his sex, though the fashion of the time did something to disguise it. He was in the act of and there can be no doubt about his upbringing. Good food, education, a nanny, loneliness and isolation. And because this is England, Orlando seemed destined to have his portrait on the wall and his name in the history books. Certain is that he had always a liking for low company.
For looks and sighs true love can best express.
But when he came into the world, he was looking for something else he could attach his heart to, though heir to a name which meant power, land, and property. Surely when Orlando was born, it wasn't privilege he sought, but company. And it was certain that many ladies would be ready to show him their favor.
For Orlando's first love, Sasha, I have tried to make a hint from the war in the world to a kind of war between the genders, or human relations in general. The sweet, a bit kitschy, waltz of seduction and attraction immediately turns over into a semantically charged march, used as a topos of violence. And we hear the ticking clock as a representative of passing time, which pops up several times in Virginia Woolf's book. Example 3. Orlando is again confronted with war in a foreign country. He detests war, and by not being able to bear the violence around him, he falls into a deep sleep again, from which he will awake as a woman. The noisemakers with metal percussion instruments are on stage, as well as the choir. They express a kind of a call to war, with a more and more agitated stamping. Unlike Orlando being heard less and less, absorbed by excited noises of war. At the accumulation point, an electronic chord rises, which is cut off by samples of a gunshot. Example 4.
There was war in that land where he went, an uprising.
The metamorphosis to a woman takes place behind a wall of brass, represented by 6 brass players on stage, and a now only female choir introduces a higher vocal range, until an electronic detuned chord reinforces the new situation. When Orlando, as a woman, sings for the first time, she is only accompanied by an electronic sound world, leading her into the unknown. Example 5.
Modesty, purity. Orlando had become a woman. There is no denying it. But in every other respect, Orlando remained precisely as he had been. for there could be no doubt.
Now to a longer excerpt, because this scene is important to me. Up till 1928, I have added only one scene to the chronology in Virginia Woolf's book, namely in the Victorian era, which was marked by an extremely high rate of abuse of women and children. For a long time, this topic was deliberately obscured and consistently shrouded in silence. I decided to use the harmonium to allude to this late 19th century period, because it epitomizes hypocritical piety, and because there is strong evidence that Virginia Woolf was sexually abused by her half-brothers and suffered from these experiences all through her life. Added to this was the loss of the family's beloved summer house. The loss or confiscation of an apartment, a home, such as Orlando experiences after metamorphosing into a woman, is a loss of love, security, and warmth, and symbolizes uprooting, expulsion, and the lack of place. It serves to show a woman that she has no place and no claim to a room of her own. The children's choir sitting in the opera house's chandelier can't be heard well on this stereo recording. But live in the hall, one could hear well the singing coming from above the audience. The light singing of Edward Lear lines at the beginning is darkened soon by the arriving of the master, the patriarch. At one point, we can hear the children's choir being accompanied by sampled Parsifal bells. A melody of the female choir is from the German Christmas carol O Tannenbaum, but it is not about the carol, but the use for the anthem The Red Flag, written in 1889 and later adopted for the newly founded British Labour Party, which also advocated women's rights. The small putto arrives as a symbol of hope and protection for the children. The house organ at the end of the scene leads to an aggressive waltz, representing a toxic masculinity, as well as the joyful swing and swaying of so many men into World War I, which is the following scene. For this scene and its words, I was harshly attacked. Sample 6.
Orlando understood that when men write about history, women's history often gets lost or misrepresented. She wanted to revise the concept of history, the fact that within the lives of so many girls and women, there was always something hidden. There was an alarming increase in sexual assaults upon children during the Victorian era. The patriarchal family was the normative family, and it often still remains the ideal family in many parts of contemporary society. Victims of incest run great risk in breaking the silence about their sexual abuse and the feelings of profound and utter powerlessness accompanied by the survivor's inability to stop abuse. What awful lives many children live. Home, a peaceful place. A peaceful place, so it looks from space. A closer look reveals the human race. And I'm afraid there's a fear out here we can't forget. Moments of closeness and pleasure for the children, and Orlando's writing was her own ticket to survival, even though it often caused her pain, because traumatic experiences are too big to recall in every detail. Which side are you on?
Bewildered
Concerning Orlando's journey through time, which becomes faster and faster after 1928, I would like to note that there are ever fewer surviving witnesses of the Shoah, which makes the following question all the more significant. How can the experiences of those persecuted during the Nazi era and exposed to annihilation be adequately conveyed? In this case, my only option was not to provide any musical commentary or any stage representation through the characters, but to allow a victim to speak, namely through an audio document, to make the unspeakable humiliation and suffering fathomable. It is the only time in this music theater that the stage is empty, creating, as it were, a quiet memorial installation space made of only names of victims. The audience then hears an excerpt of Bach's double violin concerto in D minor, performed in 1928 by Arnold Rosé with his daughter Alma Rosé, who perished in Birkenau concentration camp in 1944, accompanied only by the strains of a glass harmonica. Till Orlando's helpless, silent scream when we hear the atomic bomb exploding. Then, jumping to Virginia Woolf's line expressed by Orlando. Wars have all the letters of the alphabet. And then, with the time ticking away, we hound breathlessly through the 20th century many wars and violent conflicts, ending in the 1960s, 1970s with the movements for peace and love and against war. Example 7.
wherever you go. Vietnam, walls have all the letters of the alphabet.
And as a short insertion to show that Orlando keeps being a writer despite still being criticized for what she's doing as a creative woman, we hear a critic talking down from the screen. It's a real quote from What I Was Once Told. Example 8.
Orlando, you can't bring together all these heterogeneous elements. Genre bending is harming the purity of literature. You don't have the skills for writing great literature. If you continue like this, you'll destroy your career. You should give up and get married.
I'm speaking out because, in view of the multi-ethnic history and fluid borders of most countries on earth, the call of many powerful leaders for homogeneous nations is in itself a provocation. Inciting hatred and the degrading treatment of minorities has become the political program of many parties in even so-called Western democracies. Ordinary citizens and local politicians show solidarity with radical right-wing aggressors and lionize them as courageous defenders of the Western world. Already there is method in these transgressions. And in many countries, LGBTQ movements are treated as enemies of the state, and fake news machines go into motion. With Orlando's Child, I wanted to make a statement and so emphasize that there are times when we urgently must not put up with injustices, but speak out loudly against intolerance. This is why I have given Orlando's Child its own scene, which I wrote specially for the cabaret legend Justin Vivian Bond, whose courage and performances I have admired for years. Focusing on the topic of gender bending and transgender issues, Vivian Bond's audacious performance shows what it means to be a pioneer, to stand up publicly against discrimination and tell one's own story on a highly artistic level. I musically refer to a kind of ironic cabaret music and also to musicals. Justin Vivian Bond had a section where they could speak out whatever wanted in each performance over repeated patterns. Example 9.
Shelmedin followed ground wars. His child follows identity wars and the internet. Do you fear being rejected for just being who you were born to be?
I am here for you.
Welcome, stranger.
We've had enough of hiding ourselves, of being compressed into gender roles. We've had enough of hearing lies told about us by politicians, what they say about us. We've had enough of feeling helpless. to my mom Orlando and all the people live streaming around the world. I am Justin Vivian Bond, Orlando's child. I am not an opera singer. I'm the token trans non-binary person up in this show. Maestro, you might get ready to hit the repeat, cause I'm feeling loquacious tonight. Since it's the holiday season, I think we should talk about God. As our queer guru, Baba Ram Das says, greet everyone you meet as if they're God in drag. So, hello! But when I know who I am you. And if God is in everyone, then God is everything, which makes God queer. All hail the queer God! Walk in love, witches. Fuck the patriarchy! Thank you for all you've done, for all you've worked for us, Mom. Now we're living it ourselves. If you can't talk about your life, create your own language and share it with everyone. I love you, Mom. Dance and love, dig up the world like a mole. Our back is still against the wall. The night has come, but there's a world inside you, Mom. I want to go there with you. The free soul is rare. Free is rare. Free. But you know it when you see it. See it. See it. See it. It's all. Give yourself a chance. A chance, a chance, 'cause you were born this way, this way. Sing of your despair, Mom, you have nothing to hide. Isn't it awfully nice to be a they?
Isn't it terribly good to have a voice?
So cheers to what we all are and have.
It's wonderful who we are. They wrap us up in ribbons and will stick us in the box.
All that we are as humans should be different from machines. Hooray!
Admitting how much it hurts doesn't make you look weak. And after all this time, which passed by, don't stay quiet, like you, Orlando. I can see the truth through all the lies. So it's okay.
17 of Orlando draws attention to the insidious rise of authoritarianism, racism, intolerance, homophobia, misogyny, and all other possible reactionary tendencies. It also stresses on the explosion of public obscenity, including that of obscene rulers who have been using aggressive and defamatory language for years to badmouth the political opposition and anyone whose views differ. On the other hand, Orlando, who, after metamorphosing, has chosen to push the boundaries in life and writing as a way of life, is often confronted with severe criticism and insults for her attitude. Here is only a short excerpt. The punching bag is amplified and goes into a reverb. It is beaten heavily with a baseball bat to show aggression, while the mass is frenetically shouting out single words. Example 10.
Even though so many have been willingly falling into line, it was happening at tremendous speed, like a contagion.
This narrator speech takes place in an empty space, which is marked by detuned keyboards and the chords of a vibraphone, creating a space of uncertainty and resonance. After uttering, the cold breeze of the presence brushes Orlando's face. The narrator asks for humanity. Example 11.
The cold breeze of the present brushes Orlando's face. All the scenes I've described here, they may lie in the future or in the past. I cannot be sure. Either I am remembering or I am still imagining. But Orlando is somewhere in the grid of time, a coordinate, as am I. Different as the sexes are, they are fluid. I don't expect everyone to be able to grasp this, but we are all different. Humanity is what we all have to have.
The children appear as a sign of hope and demand a better future which has to start today. A kind of idyllic sound world for the children's hope and their reasonable demand for change is immediately questioned by a dark and strong orchestral reaction, as if the demand is being cut off and therefore not taken seriously. Example 12. The end of the opera consists of a huge chord sung and performed by everyone, and with an electronic sound diffused into the hall. The children are expressing a short remnant of hope, before a last beat onto the punching bag leads us into a scary future. Example 13.
Hello, everyone. We wish you all a heart of gold, a purse of notes, and a plate of turkey.
Orlando is my unruly and maybe brazenly political opera adaptation of the Virginia Woolf novel. I know, it's enormous and ambitious, but I wanted to make a statement, especially because a woman composer most likely only gets this chance to compose for such a huge traditional house only once in a lifetime. Therefore, I want to quote Simone de Beauvoir from her diary. Never forget that a political, economic, or religious crisis will be enough to cast doubt on women's rights. These rights will never be vested. Women must stay vigilant all their lives. And I add, as all marginalized groups must be. Thank you for your attention.